Namaste and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sattology means science of truth, the study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means science or study of fake, lie, or imagination. Thank you, all of you, for watching our videos on YouTube and making it one of the most popular in my context in popular channel. And I really grateful for your continued loyalty to our programs, good or bad. We are not all the programs are perfect. So do join our courses in the US, 12x debunking mythology course and yoga course. So today we have very interesting topic and with your very favorite guest we have. You all love him a lot. But before I invite him, I'll give you a context. When the Europeans say that the world humanity, because they want to justify their atrocities on African nations or colonizing them and looting them, they say the whole world came from Africa. My question to European origin people are, do your hair look like Africans? Do your skin look like Africans? And if that was the case, then what was there a need to civilize them? So if Africans claim that if Europeans came from Africa, we also came from Europe, will you accept it? And if there was a question to you wanted to civilize them, why not Africans want to civilize you? Because most of the wars in the world are created by Europeans. Second thing comes in agriculture. They say agriculture has a start date. Again, this is the Darwinian fallacy. Darwinian theory of evolution fallacy, which is just a theory. The middle species have never been found. Origin of agriculture. So before Europeans declared the origin of agriculture, so many years, were people hungry before that period? Was humanity able to survive so that the Europeans can declare the origin of agriculture? So most of these fallacies are illogical and unreasonable, unfounded, without any historical proof. But just because a European university has said it, and therefore everyone else has to accept it. And one thing, shocking revelation for all of you who is watching. Indian universities or universities all over the world are banned from teaching or studying European anthropology. But the Europeans have the right to study every single anthropology. Please don't take my words as I'm anti-European or anything like that. I am against illogical statements, unreasonable statements. My guest, you all know him, Rishi, Muni, Tapasvi, and I love him and his family. Wonderful people dedicated to Sanatan Dharma. So let us welcome Sri Nilesh Nilkant. Oh.
Namaskar, Aditya ji.
So I could raise all these questions, Nilesh ji, and you heard them. What is your view on all these questions? Because it looks like a fallacies of all types.
Yeah. So the efforts or desire to know is good, but one must also realize, and I think Indian sages realized very long time ago, and that's why we have in Rigved something like Nasadiya Sukta, which is to say the curiosity is good. And just from the pure curiosity drives, a certain questions. And if somebody is willing to do the right tapasya, that's efforts, activities, karma, in order to get answers to those questions, we come to know a lot about ourselves. Like, that's adhyatma, like knowing yourself is adhyatma, but also the aparavidya, paravidya, which make our life wonderful. So that's good. Like asking is good. But like Bhagavad Gita says, urdhvamulam adasyakam aswatham prahuravyam chandansyasya pranani astam vedasa vedavid. It's like a metaphor of a ashwatha vruksha with, of course, upside down. The roots are up and the branches are down, which means we actually don't know how far deep or up above the roots are. That's called aprapya. Aprapya in the sense of you can keep on digging as much as you want to know about the past. At some point, your efforts are going to be limited. You will not know about it. So from that, what you just mentioned, and you mentioned Darwin, but frankly, the dogma is because of Darwin, but also because of the situation that existed, the dogmatic religious situation that existed in Europe before Darwin. So in some sense, that's the funny thing that you see. Like, I'll give another example, but in some sense, not Darwin himself, but the Darwinism and the dogmatic religiosity of Europe, they actually come together and shake hands, which is like similar very recently that happened. I didn't read the whole story, but what's his name? Professor Richard Dawkins used to teach at Oxford. He has written good books. Writes Used to write and still possibly writes very very well. It's a wonderful writing style. I have practically read all his books and have learned a lot from them. But he falls into the category of logical positivism, which is to say, until they see the evidence, they are not willing to accept or believe in something. Now, directionally, that's not a bad idea that you want to see the evidence, but the reverse of it is not true. So, like when you see the evidence, you better believe. But if you don't see the evidence, doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't exist. There are alternate ways of knowing certain things. So that logical positivism falls into that problem. And if we talk today of agriculture, you will see that similar problem, which is to say, if the evidence doesn't exist, this is a dogma of Darwinism, like you said, the missing link. But more than even the Darwin's theory is the dogma that existed in the Abrahamic religiosity that existed in Europe. Okay, so what happened? Even when people are accepting Darwin's evolution, which is a good thing, and now the genetics is there and all that, which corroborates what Darwin was trying to propose directionally. But all the mysteries have not been, not been elucidated, and they may or may not be elucidated. But the point is, they have not given up the dogmatic religiosity even in the light of Darwin's evolution. And therefore, I don't mean Richard Dawkins, but Richard Dawkins included, they get stuck into logical positivism. And many researchers in India of the Indic research also, do atrociously nonsensical. They state atrocious nonsensical things driven by logical positivism. They may not even know what the hell they are saying or what drives them to that kind of wrong thinking. Recently, Richard Dawkins, I think, made a comment of the effect that he is a secular Christian. Okay, whatever that means. So finally, maybe in his late age, he's becoming a bit softer. I mean, he was known as a famous atheist or atheist jingoist, something like this. Of course, Adityaji, good comes out of any extreme view. So I will give him a credit. Lot of synthesis, lot of manthan did happen because of him. But because of his biased, I wouldn't say even biased, because of his certain limited view of looking at science, namely logical positivism, he restricted himself knowingly, unknowingly, ignorantly, I don't know whichever category. I used to participate in his public forum, before, and I just saw extremely jingoistic, dogmatic, what do you call zombies? You can call them scientific zombies, just like you can find religious zombies on the other side. So these are some of the offshoots or outcomes of the extremely dogmatic religiosity that was practiced there, and that percolated into even science, even in the last 500 years. And you can see that through the writings of Bacon and Kant and everyone else. They couldn't go beyond certain limit. Even say Sir Karl Popper, couldn't overcome certain limitations, and that's purely driven by this logical positivism. Of course, Karl Popper wasn't logical positivist, and precisely for that reason, he could make more progress. But we'll get into our subject today. So back to you, Adityaji, before I start sharing. But we'll talk of agriculture. And people have these questions. I get these questions all the time. Is to say, Because I have discussed evidence going back to thousands of years, Indians, but also human beings knowing agriculture. And people say, is this possible? I mean, do humans had intelligence to do agriculture? And I want to share something interesting. Again, not like unknown to everyone, but unknown to many possibly. Why human beings? The animal kingdom is very intelligent. Go ahead.
No, actually, the Christian policy in the US is very high, like in terms of Europeans are the ones who started agriculture, Europeans this, European that, but America was inhabited by Native Americans. And generally, the new logic which has come in, oh, they also came from Asia. So we also came from Europe, but they came naturally, and and there is a recorded violence against Native Americans by the American authors, that how many natives were killed to uproot them from their roots. So I would like to hear more from you. I want to see this presentation. Please continue.
Yeah, well, and just to your point, like let's say somebody claiming the natives of America, right? Native in the sense from the European standpoint, or they also killed
Came.
somebody or something. First thing, what is the evidence? But my point is, they also hurt or killed somebody. What does that mean? You are accepting that you did,
Yes.
and there is evidence for this, whereas the other remains speculation.
Speculation.
And that's not to say that people did not fight wars before. That's
It
not what
happens
we're
all the
talking. I
time.
mean, animals fight, either in a friendly way or non-friendly way for territory. Human beings fight. That's there. But let's look at the civilizational development.
Correct.
And if human feel egoistic that they are the one who do this civilizational development, I think it's going to be a humbling. Those who don't know, it's going to be a humbling experience for them. Okay, so let me begin. Let me start sharing. So let's call this agriculture itihasa. Itihasa in the sense of, that it has the element of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Agriculture was done for, in the Indian context anyways, for many more reasons than simply aggregating wealth and torturing other people. It's Bhagavad Gita, third chapter talks of the symbiotic cycle, the cycle with we as a human beings and with the universe, with the samsar or with the universe, and like through yajna. So we can call it a krushi yajna, how the things are recirculated, things are recycled back to this. So it had some different purpose where every action becomes a yajna. Literally, you eating becomes a yajna, and somebody working in the farm becomes a yajna. We have a description of sage Agasti, very ancient sage. We don't know exactly how far back. Just like I said, that Ashwatha Vruksha. If you have to start the understanding the antiquity of Indian civilization or human civilization or civilization, I'm saying, it's not possible. I mean, we can only go as far back as the evidence takes us. But so, for example, here I'll just give you some some guidelines for the origin of agriculture. For example, not to go into the details, but this you will find, say, in the Eurasia. Just look at some of the years. For example, where is the evidence of it's a Baluchistan, which is Bharatvarsha, right? Now in Pakistan, evidence of agriculture, farming going back to 9000 BC. Again, remember, we are talking of the evidence that we found. Like, think of a logical positivism. That's only we are referring to here. Pramanatashartha pratipatte. We can only talk of the evidence we have. But that evidence itself is 9000 BC, which is what? About 11,000 years ago. Now, compare that with the so-called modern academic claim of agriculture beginning in the Middle East sometime 7,000 years ago. I mean, what are you guys talking? I mean, this is there before that. Then different parts, the Indus Valley, now they're talking of mature Indus Valley civilization, the so-called Harappa, whatever, 3500 BCE. So that's more than 5,000 years ago. Some other parts, 2400 BCE, 8500 BCE, which is same as almost 9,000. So going back to 11,000 years. Central India, 5500 BCE, the timing of Mahabharata, and so on and so forth. I mean, you can just go and look at different places. Western Asia, which is that Middle Eastern, that also had going back to, it says 11,000 BC. Actually, I have seen papers going back to 14,000 BC, 14,000 BCE, correct, or even 15,000 BCE, which is going back to 17,000 years in the Middle East. So when we are studying agriculture in, say, South America or India or China or Southeast Asia, like, all the way to Indonesia and Philippines, we don't have to do this. Oh, it is older than some other place or younger than some other place. These are different places. So therefore, I gave you different dates, how they are there in rice cultivation, for example, in Yangtze River Valley, East Asia, like China, but also Cambodia, that area, Thailand, going back to 12,000 BC. So it's there. And this same author, that where I'm pulling this information from, he has written few papers, and he talks about the harvesting of grains, storage of grains, cooking of grains, and so on and so forth in the Sri Lanka, going back to 45,000 years ago. Okay. Now, in this context, Adityaji, people ask, okay, so, but because they are thinking we are still that long ago, we were jumping as just monkeys. Okay, because of the missing link that you mentioned, the third what do you call, the third chimpanzee is us human beings. That's the modern theory. So what happened? Like, how did we evolve from chimpanzee to us? And the link is missing. And of course, there are all kinds of theories around it. My point is, that's why they say, well, we don't see chimpanzees doing agriculture. I mean, they are, of course, harvesting stuff, but not necessarily the way we would look at agriculture. So what happens? I get this question all the time, Adityaji. Like, do human beings like 45,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago could do agriculture? Did they have the brain? Well, because these people don't study. In fact, there is other paper I am trying to think by the same author, if not by a few other authors. And they have said, definitely agriculture existed based on the evidence in India, based on the pyroliths, like the fossilized grains, fossilized domesticated grains, going back to 16,000 BCE. So like 18,000 years ago in India. Now, Adityaji, based on what do they say that, or why do they, how do they arrive at the 16,000 BC? Listen to this carefully. This is simply based on the fact there is nothing that limits the agriculture antiquity beyond 16,000 BC. The researchers limit it, partly driven by the logical positivism nonsense, but also because of some other climatology factors, such as the fact the last glacial maximum was around 20,000 BC, where the temperatures had gone down significantly. No, not in India. They had gone down, but not like what has happened in North America or Northern Europe. But under this misconception that this so-called last glacial maximum like surrounded the whole world, to the extent that people could not even survive, therefore they limit it to 16,000 BC. So they say after 20,000 BC, which is kind of a peak of last glacial maximum, then things started warming up, and the evidence is there. So they say, well, maybe around 16,000 BC. Until then, it was kind of dry, and now the agriculture began. But then this author that I'm showing you, he has shown the harvesting, the tropical conditions, harvesting of grains, storage of grains going back to 45,000 years ago in the Indian subcontinent. Now I want to show you something else. Those people who question the intelligence of human beings going back 20,000 and 40,000 and 60,000 and 80,000 and 100,000 years, were they capable? I mean, could their brains think of doing something like agriculture the way we understand it today, a conscious act to plant things, cultivate them, maintain them, harvest them, store them, cook them, process them, consume them, recycle it, and so on and so forth, and plant it another time. Understand the climatology cycle. My point is, why to think of even human beings, which to the best of our knowledge right now we consider the most advanced in terms of brain capacity. I want to take you back, Aditya, back to, and pick your number. It doesn't have to be any specific number. We don't know that, but back to like 45 to 60 million years ago. Okay, now this is not something new, those people who study in this area, but those who people who refuse to study, refuse to use your brain, use their brain, and do not ever get out of logical positivism. That's just one aspect of it, but do not ever get out of, this like a charvaka thinking. Only when I see with my eyes, then only I will believe. Well, nobody is going to come and bother to educate these fools. Hey, so show me. No, nobody owes you anything. I mean, this is lost by people. If you want to know something, damn it, just go and start studying, go start reading, do your own research, or get lost. I mean, it's as simple as that. Nobody owes you anything, but that's what many people think. Prove it to me. I said, no, why would I bother proving anything to you? If somebody studies, there is, for example, you would have seen it in a tropical place, you see it, but even, I mean, where I live, kind of like a tropical Georgia here, you see the plant, the leaf eating ants, but there are hundreds of different varieties of them. This is a paper, yeah, it's like from 2016, but there are papers written before and there are paper written after this. Reciprocal genome evolution in the ant fungus agricultural symbiosis. Okay, so just a quick summary. So you would have seen, especially people who have been in the tropical areas would have seen those, but otherwise, through documentaries. The fungus farming ants, like for heaven's sake, Aditya, ants are doing it. And based on the genetic study of these ants and the modifications that you see into their body structure or their antennas and their different organs and how they have evolved over time, and their genetic signature and many other aspects, this is estimated. And again, I will tell you, just like some of the recent scientists, they limit the Indian agriculture to 16,000 BC because before that there was a last glacial maximum. Similarly, this one is also estimated. Again, it's not a one fixed number here. If you see that 40 to 60 million years. I mean, somebody says, oh, but so tell me exactly when. No, you don't need to know. We cannot figure this out. And if you are incapable of knowing, this date and not being excited about this information, then you're not capable of thinking anyways. Which is to say, it doesn't matter 45 millions or 66 millions. Now, how have they estimated? They have estimated based on the dinosaur extinction event. Okay. So this could be even older or this could be somewhat later. That doesn't matter. But what you find is that these ants, let me see if I have a picture. I thought I put it there. Yes. So this is a good example. Okay. So what you're seeing here, these are the tiny nurse ants. Okay. And what you're seeing, this all white stuff, it's like this white ant larvae, okay, are dwarfed by the queen ant. This is the queen ant here. And what happens is these ants are feeding upon the protein rich produce, the food, that white thing that you are seeing. And basically that is this fungus or fungi, the plural, the different varieties of it. Guess what? They are finding these varieties. That's why they're bringing these leaves, okay? Leaves as a nutrition for that fungus to feed upon, just like we put the fertilizer and we cultivate the land. And they are bringing this strains of the fungus there, okay? And cultivating it, growing them, and then that is consumed by them as well as by the queen ant. Okay, so underground, by the way, these farms are created underground. Okay, and now I have seen it in India, like it was our school trip that basically, but growing up, I was playing with ants all the time, but I didn't know this. But actually, our field trip was taken once. Field trip meaning in certain place that people had found, because you have to actually cut it slowly, carefully underground sometime to actually see this farm, this kind of farm. There is all variety of it. So a well planned agriculture of these fungi, different varieties of fungi, with appropriate things is being practiced by ants, for heaven's sake, for a long time. The reason I'm just mentioning it is I think that should give people, hopefully, there is no guarantee. And my experience usually shows, the Bhagavad Gita's Krishna's dictate is very true. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam vetti tatvata. Among the thousands, one becomes even interested in these subjects, and among such thousands, one even shows elementary inclination, comprehension, abilities to even understand this stuff. Because you have to see this, and some idiot will just come say, okay, so maybe the ants are doing it. But from that, how do you make a progress and therefore start claiming that human beings also knew the agriculture for a very long time? Which is which is what? You saw something pratyaksha with your indriya, like a very crude external indriya, like eyes, like we are seeing the picture right now. We read something, but that's a sharira. But you have to process that information with your mind. And from the various information that you collect with your antar indriya, antendriya, you have to now use your intellect to bring it together and comprehend. Now, many people find this next to impossible. Okay, my trolls are still stuck, wherever they are stuck, not on this, on some very basic simple matter. What this tells us is that ant or ant brain, or ability of ants to communicate and whatnot, we consider them on the scale of evolution somewhere way down, meaning they came a lot earlier than us, but in terms of the intellect and in terms of comprehending ability, thinking ability. But they are doing this for millions of years. So that's something, a food for thought. When somebody, Adityaji, comes and asks a question, I think actually in Washington, D.C., that happened in the audience, although the question was asked in a very genuine way. It says, but how can human beings think of doing agriculture like thousands of years ago? And I just mentioned, like, well, do you know that the ants are doing it for millions of years? So this is just a fortune. I mean, there could be many other animal species doing something similar. Maybe just we don't know about it. Okay. In case of ants, by coincidence, we happen to come to know about it. Now, quickly, let me finish, and then if you have any questions or something, we can do the discussion. Now, the spread of agriculture. Okay, there is no one center of agriculture in the world. Okay, this is I would say, you were talking of Western European fallacy. I would say this is a Western European dogma. Even when Adityaji, they will agree that it may not have started in Europe. And we don't know that. Maybe it did start in Europe. It doesn't matter. But where is the evidence, right? The point is, they will be willing to accept, like, think of this region number 4, the Levant, like this is this is the Iraq, and then going towards Israel, Syria, Jordan, and that area. And yes, there is the evidence of agriculture in that area going back to 17,000 years. And it could be even more ancient, but the evidence points to even 17,000 years. What needs to be said in the same breath, you should say, is that the India has evidence going back to 45,000 years. That is not to say it started in 45,000 years ago. That's how most of the Indians, and I'm not talking of ordinary Indians, Adityaji, I'm talking of so-called Indic researchers. Okay, they just cannot even imagine or go or logically think and saying, hey, 45,000 is our evidence. But that doesn't tell us, there is no evidence. It said, hey, it started in 45,000 years ago. It said it existed 45,000 years ago. And it may not have existed sometime after. Like, it may die down because of the climatic conditions. We may not do certain things. Just like Rajasthan, Saraswati River was flowing there for 200,000 years. 200,000 years ago. And it was flowing until like about 7,000 years ago. But right now, there is nothing. So right now there is no agriculture. Now it is coming back, of course. But there was a time when there was nothing. But if you go back 3,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago to the so-called Indus Valley, you see the agriculture patterns. If you go back, you see the evidence of it. So yes, it can go ups and downs. My point is, if you look at China, if you look at Southern Asia, like Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, that area, the entire Indian subcontinent, parts of Africa, as you can see in the maps, the whole Mexico, then Peru. I mean, these are the places. I mean, the evidence can be found all other places too, but these are the places where we have a super rich evidence of agriculture. How far back it goes, it depends on what excavation or what kind of research that has taken place. To say that what you have found is when it began, there cannot be a more, there cannot be a bigger stupidity than that. All it says is definitely it existed then. We don't know anything happening before that. And so if you go around India, I won't spend time on this. You will find, say, this is Uttar Pradesh. Okay, going back 10,000 plus years, you see not only the evidence of agriculture, but you see a domestication, meaning it's not just a wild harvesting. And you see that from the pyroliths, like there are types of pyroliths, which is a wild grain, but also when the grains are cultivated in a, what do you say, a agriculture, the way we understand it today, it become a domestic grain, over its rotations, over its evolution. So you see that transition here into the pyroliths. Sri Lanka, the one I mentioned, going back to 45,000 years ago, actually by the same author. Okay, this is Ratnasiri Prema Tilake. Okay, that same author that I mentioned before, giving you different dates, referring to the existence of rainforest, existence of wild harvesting, storage, all of that. See here, for going back to 45,000 years, and what were they doing? They were planting, or harvesting bananas, rice, breadfruits, durians, so many things, palms and bamboos, and you see the charcoal related evidence and so on and so forth. We have talked about mouse. So the domesticated mouse, the domesticated mouse varieties around the world, their homeland is India. And so right now, if you do the research study, like that's what has been done, like not that long ago, less than 20 years ago, 2007, Bonhami from Germany. And all the domestic varieties of mouse, which is directly connected with agriculture, its home is found in India. That's what this paper shows. But something else. Now, when did this mouse go out of India? Okay, or how far back in antiquity we can find it? It's not even like last to 1,000 years, 2,000 years, Roman trade, or 3,000, 4,000 years. No, when other civilizations even didn't exist in the modern sense, guess what? Or at least the way claimed by academia, that's what I mean by they didn't exist. You are seeing here, this is I don't know the year of a paper or exactly whose paper, but I have the references. You see that Indian domesticated mouse in the area. This is going back to Ramayana times, and of course before. This is only the timestamp for that time. Remember the evidence that I mentioned in the Levant area going back to 15,000, 17,000 years. Look at this, 12,000 to 8,500 BC, the time of 12,000 BC Ramayana. Domesticated Indian mouse is there in Israel and Jordan and Lebanon and that area. Ditto, if you look at the Mahabharata times. So the out of India migrations are happening for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And now go in academia and say what they talk about the origin of agriculture, the antiquity of agriculture, and from where it went to where. Even right here, I'm showing you this dark dot, the dark circles, Adityaji. But frankly, even at the Ramayana times, and that's why we have a description of Sugriva. Sugriva is describing all the way to Alps and Andes. We know that. Guess what? The domesticated mouse, there is evidence of domesticated mouse even all the way to France, southern France. This is the area of southern France. How impressive is this? Okay, and how did they go around? That is another question. Of course, they went on the land. That's one. But they also went on the water, and we have looked through this evidence. Again, same problem. The evidence that is available to us, Pramanatashartha Pratipatte, using that Nyaya, We can only talk of the evidence we have. And that's why we talk only of the evidence, saying, you know what, there is a evidence of Indian navigation around the world going back to 20,000 years. Now, important point to understand is this is not to say that it did not exist before 20,000. It's just that we don't have a empirical evidence for it, the evidence that has not been preserved. So it may be there, may not be there. Just using our logic, very likely it was there. If somebody says, but do you have evidence? I'll say, no, I don't have evidence, at least not yet. For example, this evidence that I'm showing you right now of Indian navigation, sophisticated ports going back to 20,000 years, 20,000 years in antiquity, it did not exist. It was not found until 2020. How recent is that? Like 3 years old, 3 or 4 years old. Okay. And not just one port, multiple ports. So the entire history of last 20,000 years from the what do you call the great glacial maximum to our times is here. And that history, in a way, the evidence has in a way being destroyed right now as we speak over last 20,000 years because of the increase in the sea level rise. Okay, so that this would have existed there, and it has gone through ups and downs over the cycle, Milkovich cycle, and so on and so forth. So it would have existed, only the evidence get destroyed, when that happens. But we do have evidence going back to 20,000 years, and very detailed way how it comes to our times to current Pumpuhar. Okay, so I'll stop on this. But we started saying this. Those simple, humble red ants, just be careful with them. They can bite. Okay, carrying those leaves. Think of this. Okay, where are they carrying the leaves for? Okay, of course, I have seen these. Like a specific name that I have, like where I grew up, and they also build nests out of these things too. Like these leaves, and they use the glue from their mouth. They do that, but also these are used as a fertilizer, as a nutrition, as a food for their agricultural plantation of fungi. Okay, so all right. With that, I'll stop, Aditya. Back to you.
What a fascinating, like if the ants can eat, and so human beings more advanced than any animal or ant species cannot eat. I mean, the agriculture they can do, but human beings cannot do. Like it's illogical also.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
and think of it, people are worried about the missing link, jump from chimpanzee to human beings. How crazy they are going to find the agriculture missing link jump from the ants to human beings. So,
anyway, like nowadays the logical and reasonable part of arguments are missing, like in terms of pratyaksha praman. Like the pratyaksha is everything, but
hmm,
anuman agama is missing.
yes,
And the religious dogmatic views also cover these kind of scientific discoveries, because they want to conform to Abrahamic religious viewpoints, so that they can prove that Abrahamism brought civilization to the world. So there's a hidden colonial agenda also, which is
correct.
still going on.
Yeah. Yeah, which is to say, Aditya, what happened is even, not even, in the Sanatana tradition, there was always an emphasis on the Pratyaksha. That wasn't
Correct.
the issue.
Correct.
But Sanatana tradition, all our Darshan Shastra also understood that everything cannot be grasped by Pratyaksha, everything cannot be grasped by Pratyaksha and Anumana, everything cannot be even grasped by Shabda. Like you are asking for some authority to tell you so that you become happy. And the person will say, no, I don't know, or will decide to stay mauna. That's how the muni, like unless something intelligent discussion is going on, he or she may choose not to say anything. Go figure, what we call in the modern day.
And nowadays, drones are very popular. In drones, there are two concepts. One is LOS, line of sight,
Hmm.
which is approximately 250 kilometers radius.
Hmm.
And there's another one known as SAT-LOS, satellite line of sight, which
Hmm.
goes for thousands of kilometers.
Yeah.
So then, if somebody has Shraddha and a guru guidance, is almost like satellite LOS. You can see much
Correct.
wider.
Correct.
If you see the world through the eyes of Vyasdev, then you can see amazing things. But if
Yeah.
you see with your own eyes, sometimes things may not appear blurry. Like I need glasses to see.
Yeah, or if somebody doesn't have a shraddha, and it is their choice, totally understandable, whether they have a shraddha, they have a belief in what can be grasped through, say, yoga, or not yoga in the sense of just doing Surya Namaskar or physical
Asana.
posture, but what Bhagwan Patanjali is referring, to. Patanjali is saying it. Now, somebody should be willing to do it, right? If you do this, you can get a knowledge of your past births, or things like that.
Right?
Which is what? Before you became Vyakta, like in our current bodies, and then when this body is thrown, then again we get into Avyakta, like Samparaya, what happens after death. That is something that so far we have not found out how to study it using our modern approach of a Pratyaksha Anumana, or even ancient approach of Pratyaksha Anumana. That is to be done on a very different platform. That is what our sages have done. But they cannot show proof of it. They can show the inferences,
Right.
right? Through the prarabdha, why this particular human being's life start point is different than others, and therefore ask you to draw the inferences. But somebody says, show me the proof. It's like, heck no, don't waste my time. That's what these sages would have said.
Thank you so much, Nilesh, for coming on the show and sharing this wisdom. And for all the viewers who are watching, there is a whole playlist of Nilesh show on Sattology. You can watch 100 plus videos non-stop for almost like 100 plus hours. So thank you so much and namaste.
Namaskar.